My girlfriend ran off with my best friend, leaving me with her debts and empty walls. They thought they'd get away with it, but I was ready to hit back in a way they'd never forget. All right, buckle up. Name's Alex, I'm 27, and until recently, life was pretty all right. Got myself a decent job, a cool girlfriend, Lisa, who's 25, and my best friend, Nate, who's 28. You'd think I was living the dream, right? Yeah, that's what I thought too, until life decided to throw a curveball that hit like a truck. Picture this. I get home after a regular day at work, expecting, well, the usual. Maybe Lisa's cooking something, though honestly, she wasn't exactly a chef, or at least chilling on the couch. Instead, the apartment feels like a ghost town. And when I say empty, I mean empty. Lisa's stuff? Gone. Her books, clothes, random cute decorations that made my place look like a Pinterest board, all vanished. So there I am, standing in the middle of my own place, feeling like I just walked onto the set of some twisted reality show. I spot a note on the kitchen counter, just sitting there, like it's waiting to slap me in the face. It's Lisa's handwriting, all neat and tidy, like she planned this for weeks. It says, "I'm leaving. Don't look for me. I'm with Nate." Pause for dramatic effect, because yeah, it was that kind of moment. My best friend. I actually laughed for a second, thinking, wow, this has to be some kind of prank. But nope, the silence was louder than any punchline. It wasn't a joke. She just left. With Nate. Like, with Nate. My first thought, this cannot be real. Second thought, oh, it's real, all right. The worst part is, I wasn't just left with an empty apartment. No, that would have been too easy. The next morning, I get a call from my bank. They start talking about overdue payments, and I'm sitting there, dumbfounded, while they explain that apparently I had racked up a pile of debt. Only it wasn't me, it was Lisa. Turns out, while she was playing house, she was also playing me like a deck of cards. Credit cards, to be exact. Imagine trying to keep a straight face while someone tells you that you're thousands in the hole for things you didn't even buy. The kicker? It was all in my name. Lisa somehow figured out my details and set me up to cover her little shopping spree. And just like that, my life wasn't just upside down. It was flipped, shaken, and pretty much crushed into pieces. The shock? Yeah, it was real, but it lasted about 5 minutes before it turned into pure anger. I was left standing in my wrecked apartment, surrounded by empty spaces where her stuff used to be, wondering how on earth two people I trusted just threw me under a bus. All right, comma. So there I was, left with an empty apartment and a whole new mountain of debt, all thanks to the lovely duo, Lisa and Nate. You'd think that was enough betrayal for one guy, but no, life had a few more tricks up its sleeve. See, after the shock wore off, I went into full get answers mode. I called Nate's number first, expecting... Actually, I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe him to pick up, laugh nervously, and tell me it was all one big misunderstanding. Spoiler, didn't happen. The phone rang twice before I got hit with the "this number has been disconnected" message. Oh, very nice, Nate. Real smooth, I thought, almost impressed. Almost. I tried Lisa next, just for kicks. Of course, she was one step ahead, and surprise, surprise, I was blocked. They'd not only ditched me, but also made sure I couldn't even get a single word in. Nothing like betrayal with a side of cut off all communication, right? I sat there for a second, my phone still in my hand, just staring at the screen like an idiot. And that's when the first wave of real anger hit. I'm talking boiling, steaming, I'm going to tear down the walls, kind of anger. I was mad at them, mad at myself for not seeing this coming, and just mad at the universe for thinking this was some kind of cosmic joke. I was half expecting someone to pop out and yell, "Surprise! Just kidding!" But nope. It was just me sitting in silence, realizing how badly I'd been played. And to add insult to injury, my phone rings again. This time it's the bank. Oh, great. Just what I needed. I pick up, and this guy on the other end starts his spiel about delayed payments and outstanding balance. I cut him off, asking, "What balance? I didn't buy anything." The guy's quiet for a second, then goes, "Sir, we have several charges linked to your account. There are also a few credit cards with substantial amounts on them." He starts listing things off like it's a grocery list, only I never shopped for any of it. Apparently, my dear ex-girlfriend had a taste for the good life. Designer clothes, fancy dinners, even a little weekend getaway, and I was footing the bill for it all. I could almost hear Lisa and Nate laughing, probably enjoying some overpriced cocktail somewhere, all on my tab. I barely even heard what the bank guy was saying by this point. My mind was racing, and the only thing I could think was, this is not how this story ends. Yeah, they thought they were real clever, running off into the sunset with each other and leaving me in the dust. But I had one thing they didn't count on, a burning desire for payback. Alright, so if you think I was just going to sit around crying into my empty wallet, you clearly don't know me. Sure, Lisa and Nate had pulled off a solid disappearing act, but let's be real, for they left behind a ton of breadcrumbs, and if they thought they'd get away with it scot-free, please. It was time for me to get creative. First things first, I needed a game plan. And what better place to start than with our mutual friends? You know, the ones who thought we were some kind of inseparable trio. Oh, they were about to get the story of a lifetime. So I went to one of our usual hangouts where I knew a bunch of people would be. I walked in, plastered on my best life's fantastic smile, and sat down. They asked me where Lisa and Nate were. If only they knew. Well, let me tell you a little story, I started, leaning back with a grin that probably screamed trouble. And then I dropped the whole saga on them. The note, the disappearing act, the mountain of debt she left me with. I didn't leave out any details. I watched as their jaws dropped lower and lower, a mix of shock and amusement playing across their faces. One of them, Tony, just sat there blinking at me and finally managed, "Dude, what the heck? Are you serious?" I almost laughed at how they couldn't wrap their heads around it. "Oh, I'm dead serious," I said. "Lisa and Nate? Yeah, they're off living it up together. Meanwhile, I'm here picking up the pieces. It's like a bad movie plot, only without the happy ending." Now, here's the thing. Gossip spreads fast. I knew within 24 hours this story was going to be all over town. Every friend of a friend, every nosy person we knew would be talking about how Lisa and Nate double-crossed me. They might have been off-grid, but I could still control the narrative. And nothing ruins a romantic escape quite like everyone knowing what a pair of conniving snakes you really are. Then I took it a step further. See, I'd been sitting on a bunch of old photos and videos of us, the kind of stuff they probably thought was buried forever. Well, think again. I posted a few harmless shots of Lisa and Nate from some of our past parties, just enough to make people start connecting the dots and putting their own spin on the story. I didn't say anything too direct. I wanted them to wonder, to start piecing together their own version of events. And guess what? It worked. A few comments started rolling in. "Didn't see that one coming." "Wait, weren't they both with Alex?" Stuff like that. Just a trickle, but enough to get the rumor mill spinning full force. I knew they'd feel it. Wherever they were hiding, they'd feel the burn of everyone whispering about their shady little vacation. And this was just the start. So here's where things start to get interesting. I knew the public shaming was just the appetizer. I wanted the main course, something they'd choke on. Lisa and Nate probably thought they were in the clear, that they'd wiped their tracks clean. But remember, when you spend years with someone, they leave a lot of evidence behind, little traces that just need the right person to dig them up. See, I remembered that Lisa had this habit of saving stuff on my laptop, and being the genius she is, she'd never bothered to delete most of it. I booted it up, half expecting to find nothing. But oh boy, was I wrong. She'd left behind files, screenshots, emails, all kinds of digital breadcrumbs. Turns out, she'd been planning this little stunt for way longer than I thought. One folder was actually labeled Receipts. Yeah, real original. It was like finding a diary titled My Betrayal. Inside, I found photos from some swanky places she'd been to with Nate, little trips she'd taken for work that now made a whole lot of sense. I was scrolling through, chuckling to myself, thinking, You two really thought you were untouchable, huh? But the real jackpot was a series of emails. Yep, good old-fashioned text evidence. Turns out Lisa had been emailing Nate about me, making little plans and jokes behind my back. They had this whole us against him vibe going on. One email even said, "Alex will never find out." Well, guess what? I found out, and it was about to bite them harder than they could have imagined. With all this dirt in hand, I started thinking of how best to use it. Posting it all in one place would be too easy. No, I wanted to spread it out, make it so they couldn't turn anywhere without bumping into their own mess. I compiled everything into a neat little package, saved it under Operation Payback, and got to work. I knew exactly who to contact first. Nate was always bragging about his fancy job and professional connections, acting like he was hot stuff. So I made sure a few choice photos and emails made their way to some mutual acquaintances who happened to be in his field. I didn't need to say much. The files spoke for themselves. Nothing like a good scandal to shake up someone's oh-so-polished reputation. The best part? It wasn't even about revenge anymore. It was about watching them squirm, knowing they had nowhere to hide .allright comma time to set the plan into motion. If Nate and Lisa wanted a new beginning, then who was I to stop them? I'd just make sure they'd be starting over with a little, let's say, reputation adjustment. Step 1, social media. There's nothing quite like the power of the internet to turn up the heat on people who thought they were untouchable. I started by posting a few innocent group shots from some of our wild party nights. You know, the kind that get people talking. But here's the twist. I threw in a few not-so-innocent photos that hinted Lisa and Nate were getting a little too close, way before they ditched me. No captions, no explanations, just enough to make everyone's eyebrows go up a few inches. My notifications started blowing up within minutes. Comments, likes, messages. Everyone was connecting the dots, and the story was practically writing itself. One of our mutual friends, Jamie, slid into my DMs like, "Hey, isn't that Lisa with Nate? Weren't you guys all friends?" Oh, Jamie, if only you knew. "Yeah, funny story," I replied, tossing in a smirking emoji for good measure. "Turns out they decided to upgrade without giving me a heads up." Jamie's reaction, priceless. I could practically hear her gasp through the screen. Once the gossip started spreading, it was only a matter of time before their new reality would come crashing down. But I was just getting warmed up. Step 2, taking it beyond the internet and into the real world. I reached out to a few people who knew Nate professionally. You know, colleagues, bosses, those types who love a good scandal but hate being associated with one. Let's just say, when they got my anonymous email with a few choice photos and screenshots, the response was immediate. The next day, word got around that Nate was getting called in for a little discussion at work. Guess his bosses weren't thrilled about having an employee with such a colorful extracurricular life. Meanwhile, Lisa was getting some friendly texts from her family, wondering why her name was suddenly being dragged through the mud. Oh, the sweet irony. I sat back, watching the whole thing play out from a distance, watching them scramble, trying to clean up a mess they didn't even see coming. They thought they'd pulled a fast one on me, that they could just ride off into the sunset without any consequences. But I was right there, flipping the script, making sure they got exactly what they'd earned. So, comma, Nate and Lisa thought they could just vanish into thin air and start fresh. Cute. But if they wanted to play dirty, I'd make sure they couldn't set foot in this town without someone whispering about their little betrayal getaway. It was time to escalate. And lucky for me, I had just the right contacts to make this happen. See, Nate had spent years building up this super polished, I'm a serious professional image. He'd networked his way up, and you'd think he was the golden boy of his office. But now, all I had to do was let a few choice people in his circle know the truth. So I started dropping anonymous emails to a couple of his highbrow work contacts, not too detailed, just enough to make them curious. First email went something like this. "Hey, just thought you should know, your star employee Nate has been up to some extracurricular activities that might not exactly align with your company's values. Attached are some enlightening photos. Enjoy. Sent it off with a smile, imagining the look on his boss's face when he saw Nate playing house with his best friend's girlfriend. Can't buy that kind of entertainment. Oh, and I didn't forget about Lisa. She'd always been the family pride, constantly flaunting her perfect life to everyone she knew. I figured her folks would appreciate a friendly heads up about her latest life choices. I may have sent her mom a screenshot or two, along with a note. Guess Lisa didn't tell you about her new living arrangements, huh? That was enough to send her family into full-on chaos mode. Meanwhile, I kept getting updates from our friends, who had absolutely no chill. They couldn't resist telling me every single detail about what they were hearing. Apparently, Nate's boss was not thrilled about his double life, and had even started questioning his ethics. Ouch. And then there was Lisa's family. Word on the street was her mom practically had a meltdown. Couldn't blame her. Imagine bragging about your daughter's perfect life, only to find out she'd pulled a disappearing act with her boyfriend's best friend. Not exactly the stuff of family reunions. Within days, I'd turned Nate and Lisa's little escape plan into a full-on town scandal. People they barely even knew were talking about it. They were becoming legends. Just not the kind they'd hoped for. And the best part? I hadn't even scratched the surface yet. By now, Lisa and Nate's fresh start was more like a dumpster fire. And I was the guy holding the match. The social media whispers had turned into full-on wildfire, and their reputations were officially in shambles. But me? I was just getting started. It was time to crank things up a notch. So Nate, Mr. I'm Too Important to Be Bothered, had this big work event coming up. The kind where everyone who's anyone in his industry would be there, rubbing elbows, handing out business cards like candy. I figured it'd be rude of me not to contribute. I slipped a little heads up to a few people who'd be attending, along with some juicy screenshots so they could see Nate in all his two-faced glory. And wouldn't you know it, by the time he walked into that event, he was practically radioactive. A friend who was there told me Nate tried to shake hands with some big shot, only for the guy to give him the coldest shoulder imaginable. Apparently, word had spread that Nate wasn't exactly trustworthy. His charm offensive turned into a solo act pretty fast, and he spent the night lurking around the edges like some ghost at his own funeral. I was loving it. As for Lisa, she wasn't off the hook either. I had a few friends who were still in touch with her family, and let's just say they were not shy about passing along updates. Her mom was practically begging her to come home and fix things. Meanwhile, her little siblings, who'd always thought she was some kind of perfect role model, were now calling her out, asking her if everything they'd heard was true. She'd gone from family favorite to family disappointment in record time. Honestly, if there were awards for this kind of downfall, she'd be sweeping up trophies. Now, here's the thing about small towns. People love a good scandal, and these two had delivered one on a silver platter. I made sure everyone knew every detail, from the way they sneaked around to the ridiculous amount of debt they'd left me with. I didn't need to exaggerate. The truth was ugly enough. My friends would shoot me messages like, "Dude, you've created a monster. People can't stop talking about them." And I'd reply, "Good. Let 'em talk." All right, so they were practically infamous by now. Everyone who was anyone knew about Nate and Lisa's backstabbing romance. But I wasn't done. I had one last move, the knockout punch to end all punches. I figured, why not go big and make it unforgettable? I'd saved the juiciest bits, screenshots of their sappy, cringe-inducing messages, and receipts from their fancy little escapades, all bought with my money. I crafted an anonymous post titled something like, "Beware of these two master manipulators," and dropped every single piece of dirt I had. Within hours, the post was going viral in our town. The comments? Ruthless. People were practically lining up to roast them. Is this real? They actually did that? Oh, they did, all right. And I made sure everyone knew exactly who they were. Friends, family, coworkers. Even random strangers were piling on. Nate and Lisa had officially become legends, just not in the way they'd hoped. Best part? They couldn't even defend themselves. They'd left such a mess behind that even if they tried, No one would believe a word they said. I sat back, watched it all unfold, and couldn't help but think, well, that worked out beautifully.